Our YouTube community is second to none. I often get people leaving comments or messages asking why we don't have a larger user base, and I typically reply that I kinda love it this way. I get to have one-on-one discussions with so many of you because there aren't hundreds of thousands of you watching and replying to these particular videos. One conversation I had recently was with a user named Matthew C, and it was really interesting as he was asking me if I could review Vatlva, which is pretty much an unknown and obscure Japanese exclusive to the Saturn released in 1996. Well, Matthew, this one's for you, good sir. So before we begin, I need to address some housekeeping issues. Vatlva is one of those rare games that is displayed in high resolution on the Saturn, and the FrameMeister, which is what I use to upscale the games to HD, really doesn't like when these sorts of games switch from one resolution to the next. And what ends up happening is usually the audio cuts out a little bit here and there. So I apologize in advance if the footage isn't optimized. Vatlva was made by Ancient, the same internal SEGA developer who actually made Streets of Rage 2, 3, as well as Beyond Oasis and Legend of Oasis. In other words, these guys had serious cred on SEGA hardware. I consider this game something of a side project for the group. Unlike those games, this one doesn't exactly come across as a AAA Omega budgeted title. That's not to say it's bad or that it lacks quality, far from it to be honest. More that it just feels like something the group would get together on, say, like a Friday night to work on. If the artwork looks somewhat reminiscent to you, it's because it was done by Hitoshi Ariga, the main man behind tons of Mega Man artwork as well as the Pokemon trading card game. The graphics of the arenas are a bit simplistic by today's standards, but I love the portrait art and how the characters make all sorts of different faces and expressions based on what's happening on the track. There are 3D models that look surprisingly detailed when the camera pans in on the action. And speaking of which, I love how the camera is dynamic and changes based on how many players are left and where the bulk of the action is taking place. And good old Yuzo Koshiro handled the soundtrack, and it's awesome. However, most of the time I find it's overshadowed by the sound effects, just in terms of channel placement. So what is Vatlva? Well, in short, it's a vehicular combat game, something akin to Twisted Metal. You select between a nice assortment of vehicles you wish to control, and off you go. Your objective is to be the last group standing. And I did say group because each vehicle is controlled by two individuals. So you select a team and, well, begin the game. As you progress, you can unlock additional vehicles such as the different boss characters. Each vehicle has a different set of weapons, 6 to be precise. Each weapon corresponds to a different button, A, B, C, and X, Y, Z. Some vehicles have charge shots, while others have shields, and so on. Ammunition does run out over time, but you can collect power-ups that pop up on the arena floor every now and then to replenish your stock. You can even save the loadout of your vehicle as you progress, although you'll really need to get the hang of the controls before you start messing around with the different weapon types. Speaking of which, the game plays wonderfully with the 3D analog controller, so I recommend you invest in one if you're looking to check this game out. I should also point out that the game is entirely in Japanese. But with a bit of tinkering, it isn't too hard to figure out what you need to do. This is particularly important when you do go to customize your vehicle loadout. It will take a little bit of getting used to, but it's not too bad. In terms of gameplay modes, there's actually quite a few. You have your general arena mode where you can go up against all the opponents one at a time. There's even a co-op team-based version of the main campaign, which is really cool. You have obviously multiplayer. And there's a bot-filled arena mode where you can have up to 6 vehicles in one arena at any given time. And yes, the game actually supports 6-player local multiplayer, which is awesome. Obviously, you'll need a multi-tap. In fact, coupled with Saturn Bomberman, this is one of the best multiplayer experiences on the Saturn. It's an absolute blast to play at parties. Obscure Saturn games like this that are affordable are getting very hard to find today. This one actually goes for under $30, so if you're interested, I would highly recommend you go out and buy a copy as soon as possible before videos such as this one take off and expose more people to the game and therefore end up raising the price. I'd like to thank Matthew for reaching out and recommending this game, as it's an absolute blast that I had totally forgotten about. I can tell you this, at my next Saturn party, I know precisely which game I'm going to introduce everyone to.